Okay, somebody has their TV on. Okay. Did you guys have a good weekend with the fall break? Good. All right. I painted a fence. What did you guys do?
I went home and spent some time with my family.
Well, that makes me feel like a jerk. Great. uh, okay, what was really disgusting over the weekend? I love horseradish, and I got the Beaver brand cream horseradish is really good, and I got it. I was all excited to make myself a sandwich. Opened it up, and I just took that little plastic thing off. And have you guys ever slipped and fallen into a sewer? Can you imagine how nasty that would be? That imagine that smell condensed and put in the horseradish bottle. It had gotten bad. So the next morning, I took it back to Walmart, and the lady took her time helping me and everything. And can't really blame her. It looked like her feet were sore, but I would be willing to bet even money that one of her helpers took that and put it back on the shelf. That was so nasty and vile. And I've been to places like that in a hurry, with kids screaming and stuff. You pick something up and you find out that it's a package that somebody else had opened and rejected and put back, and oh, that's awful. Anyway, as long as it isn't consumables, it's manageable. But if you can you imagine, oh, I guess that's a good thing to have in your first aid supply. If anybody eats something they're not supposed to and they need to throw it up really quick, just have them whiff the horseradish. It was nasty. Okay, today have both of you been able to look at the module for this week? It's basically just a research module, and what the research project is going to be, you're going to be doing a annotated bibliography, and I'll explain what that is a little bit. And I'll release, what I'm going to do is release two modules at the same time, where you'll be able to get to see that one. You'll know it's coming up, and then we'll do a couple other things in between so that you have time to work on it. And I'll have a video in there. I'm teaching another class where people are getting confused as to what an annotated bibliography is. Bibliography is not the same as biography. Bibliography is a list of books or citations. And MLA has standard citation format for anything from a personal interview all the way to ancient one-of-a-kind books. And they're standardized so that anybody can copy your research. And when you do stuff on the internet, you also have to include the line accessed on and then give a date. Because do you guys know about archive.net or the Wayback Machine? Both of those are websites that you can find anything on the internet the way it looked at a specific date and time. And so if you're quoting an article or a video that somebody has accidentally taken down or whatever like that, if you do access on this date on your citation, anybody can use one of those websites to find it again. And so which is really nice, because then people don't think you're pulling stuff out of your ear. They can actually copy your research and see, oh yeah, they do know what they're talking about. So bibliography is a list of resources, and you can do videos, interview. I had one person, they were actually able to get a hold of the artist that they wanted to study, and they did interview the person for about an hour and a half and got permission to edit like 20 minutes of it to show to the whole class. And that was pretty cool. And then a lot of people will do articles and stuff like that as well. And I wanted to just address, and we'll talk about this again later, but I also wanted to talk about when you are doing internet research, there is something you have to be very aware of. And I'm saying you in general, not just you. I'm not picking you two out. because I've seen what you guys have done research wise, and I'm picking on you specifically. This is just for everybody. Research, especially on the internet, you really don't know where the sources are coming from unless you do your research into that as well. What are the qualifications for publishing something on Wikimedia or Wikipedia? You're right. There's none. There's absolutely no qualifications. So Wikipedia as a source when you're doing research is really no good at all, except for, what do you think it is good for?
Finding the resources that they got their stuff from.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect answer. Now, when you do that, so if you're looking up an artist, look up an artist on Wikipedia, then find out where they got their information up, and you can look at their articles and stuff that they went to. That is the best thing that I also love Wikipedia for stuff that, like if I know I'm going to talk to a completely new group of people and I don't want them to become friends, I look at Wikipedia for resources on things like crop circles and cryptid sightings. And that's all I talk about at the dinner party or whatever. Then everybody knows I'm wackadoodle and nobody wants to contact me, which is exactly the way that I prefer. However, but the second biggest thing for Wikipedia is exactly what Brianna said. Now, what do you have to keep your eyes open for when you start doing research on the internet? Have you heard of terms like confirmation bias? One of the ways that marketers get you to buy stuff is to lower your inhibitions against buying. The easiest way to do that is to baffle you or to get you emotionally invested. And either way, you're not thinking clearly. And so when advertisers, you work with things like social media, like Facebook, particularly, they depend on the algorithm that shows you more of what you want to see. Your computer system, when you're doing searches, it knows what you have already liked or enjoyed searching for. So it tries to show you more things like that. So you're not necessarily finding out new information. You're finding out more information that lines up with what you already are looking for. That's called confirmation bias, where you are finding stuff to support the biases that you are dressed with as you go in to do your research. Is that a bad thing? I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Facebook and other social media platforms like that use the confirmation bias specifically to target you as a consumer, because it sees you as somebody ready to buy. And so it will send you articles that will either baffle you or get you emotionally invested. And when you get emotionally involved, whether they don't care if makes you angry or happy, as long as your emotions are engaged, your intellect stops making the decisions for you, and it makes you a prime target for buying stuff or to get on people's lists so that they can later help you to buy stuff painlessly. Great if you are advertising for your business on Facebook. But you need to be mindful of that. So as you do your research, think about where the articles come from as well. Are you finding them on social media? Are you finding them on a search? A good thing to do if you want to do research that is not biased towards what you're already looking for is to log out of all your online applications and reset the cookie cache and information cache, and then don't log in to Google when you do your research, or use something like DuckDuckGo, where they do not. If you've already logged out and you've gotten rid of your cache, cleaned out your caches on your computer, it will help you to do research without any of that confirmation bias. Another thing you need to be mindful of: who is producing the artwork. If you want to get a completely non-biased view of an artist, would you go to a museum or university resource, or would you go to that artist's online store? If you're going to the artist's online store, what kind of information do you think the artist is going to want to share with you?
Things they're trying to sell.
Yeah, exactly. If you go, and sometimes that's also true of museum sites if they have that person's stuff on display. But one thing that I like about like the Metropolitan Museum of Art and other museums like that is that there is, if they have anything of that artist on display or in the gift shop, they are going to want to sell it to you. But until they get to that point where they're doing the sales pitch, they are really good at giving you information that shows you that artist in the best possible light. So you're not, now if you are looking up an artist who has a bunch of ex-spouses and the website is written by all the ex-spouses who hate that artist's guts, do you think that's going to be a fair and unbiased view of the artist? Potentially not. Or all the artist, all the people that the artist owes money to. Yeah, that would be a bad site to look up. If you're looking up something on the BP oil spill and it's an article written by BP Oil as opposed to the Sierra Club, who do you think is going to be more dismissive of the damage it's caused, and who do you think is going to be more engaged in a lot of concern about the damage that was done? The Sierra Club is probably going to tell you all the horrible things that's happened, and BP Oil is probably going to be very dismissive of the damage that was done. So so be mindful of this. A third thing to watch out for is about 12 years ago, I got kind of excited because articles about me started showing up and my work started showing up in the Middle East. And I thought, this is really exciting. And then I got really sad because the first article showed up in an Egyptian newspaper, Egyptian language newspaper. That was pretty cool. They were talking about my artwork. And then there were very quickly about a dozen other sites throughout the Middle East that picked that article up, put it on their own websites with another different title. So it looked like it was a new article, but it was the exact same one. So if you're looking up 5 pieces of information on an artist and they all seem like they're pretty similar, look as to where they got their information from, because it is pretty common for online magazines and online sites to borrow articles from all over the place. And if you're tracking down the same article just published under different headlines, that can be a little bit irritating, because it's not giving you new information, is it? So those are 3 things to look for. I'm just writing a note to myself because I just thought of something. There is a writer, I can't remember that writer's name, but I think you'll agree with it. He said ideas are like tiny fish. And if you don't catch them right away with the tip of your pen, you'll lose them forever. And I thought that's pretty good, because I find a lot of the ideas that we get wriggle away pretty quickly if we don't write them down. Oh, there was something else that I saw in my email feed that I thought you guys might be interested in. There's in the Student Resource Center this week, there is a display called Empty Shoes. And it's all about domestic violence and domestic abuse, which I thought was really an interesting exhibit. If you guys get a chance to go over there to the Student Resource Center, it'll be up for several days. I would be willing to bet if you just check it out, it would be worth your time. Anyway, the 2 big things that I want you to be mindful of that as you move into the artist research, and that will be in the next week or 2. But one thing that I want you to do first, as you go through this module, is all about that list of artists and beginning your research, beginning to pick who you want to do. There's 24, there's a list of 85 artists. I want you to look up 24 of them and do this. Look up artist name, then art. So Andy Goldsworthy art, Mariko Mori art. And then I want you to go through, find something that you like, that you feel you respond to, and then write down a brief description of it. Now, you don't have to apply the 4 tools of artistic critique, but I want you to have those in the back of your mind as you're looking at this art to see if it's worth your time. Because what you'll do is circle back later, pick an artist to do more research on, and then look up some more of their stuff and talk about it a bit. So if you're scrolling through and you see some names that are really interesting, you'll see names that I've spoken about. I've tried to include artists from every continent, and I wasn't entirely fair because I did not include Antarctica. I'm sure that there's probably an artist that we can find that's on the continent of Antarctica, but I didn't go out of my way to find one. And I'm sorry if you feel that that's a personal or moral failing on my part. I just didn't do it. But we found one from every other continent. And just to remind you, so that again, you don't think I'm completely useless, Greenland technically is not a continent. And there's no artists on the list from there either. But as you go through, I would like you to consider looking for artists that look like they may have names that are not the same as yours, or people that maybe you may be unfamiliar with their culture. And don't necessarily target those only, but be mindful of that. And stretch yourself a little bit. Try to find artists that are interesting to you, that are not like stuff that you see all the time. And then, so you do have that artist list to go through. And I have 6 different groupings where you have to pick 2 from each of those groupings. And then the rest of the artists, you just pick 12 from that large group that you pick. And you can just do it completely random. It doesn't matter. But if you find somebody that you just really don't like their stuff, don't do that person, go to somebody else. Okay, so there's plenty to choose from. I used to require people to do this on every one of the people in that list. And the list used to be 130 people long. And my children convinced me that that was evil. So I don't do that anymore. Then for the quiz, what you're going to be doing for the quiz is, and this quiz will take you longer than the other quizzes, because you will have to find the artist that the quiz refers to and find out enough information about them that you can answer true or false questions. An example of that would be Judith Scott appropriated, or in other words, stole small items from other residents in the place that she lived in to create her art. Is that true or false? Judith Scott was a woman that, and this is really sad, she was born long enough ago that in the US, children that were differently enabled or were neurologically different than their peers, or where the doctors felt that they should be on the growth scale, were institutionalized. That was just what the families were told. So Judith Scott, she had a twin sister who did not, or she had a sister who did not know that she had a sister, because her sister, Judith Scott, was institutionalized when they were very, very young. And it was only years later that her sister was able to find her. And the last 10 or 12, the last several years of Judith Scott's life were completely blissful, because she had found this woman, her sister, that she had been without for her entire life, except for her youngest childhood. And she remembered her sister. She was institutionalized because she was born deaf, and her brain was not developing in the same way that her sister was. And so the doctors convinced the parents, yeah, you need to shut her away. What she would do is she would walk the halls of the residence area that she lived in, kind of sneak into people's rooms and find little teeny tiny objects. And then she would smuggle these into her own room. And then she would start wrapping them with yarn or string or tape or whatever she could find. And she'd make these huge cocoon shapes that when they x-rayed them years later, they found all these objects that the residents had complained had disappeared mysteriously. So I thought that none of those residents wanted their stuff back when they found out that it had been in their roommate's artwork, which I thought was kind of cute. So, but really, her renaissance and her personal artwork came when she was reconnected with her sister, and she just exploded with creativity. And I thought that was beautiful. And that was when they found out that she had just been deaf, and that's why she hadn't been communicating. Isn't that terrifically sad? But so the example of that, the question is a true or false question, and once you find out a little bit about her, when you do a couple minutes of research, then you can answer it. And so that's what the quiz is. So open internet. Well, that was everything that I needed to cover. So what questions do you guys have about this or previous modules? No questions at all? Okay, I'm going to ask you to do something a little bit creative. Give me each a question that you think somebody else in the class might have, because you guys are each representing 12 people.
I kind of know the answer to this one, but like how is an annotated bibliography formatted?
That is an excellent question. I got sidetracked and with my pachinko brain. The annotated okay, you know what? What's the difference between a bibliography and a biography?
The list of sources.
Right. You're not telling me the story about the subject. You're giving me a list of sources that are on the subject. And that can include anything from videos that you find or articles or real world books. Do you guys, have either of you ever held a real world book? Do you know what that is? No? Okay. Well, it's something that looks like the papers you might print off to hand in, and they're all connected at one side. So that's what a real book is. But an annotated bibliography is you have a list of resources. Then for each resource, you're going to write 2 paragraphs about what you learned from that resource. Annotation is when you are writing related to that resource. So if you watched a 20-minute video on an artist or an 8-minute video, you're going to explain in 2 paragraphs what that artist said in that video or what was shown in the video, what they talked about. Or if it's an article, what they talked about in the article. Like Damien Hirst, you could find articles about a couple of the shows that he did, and then also somebody complaining about the dead shark he put in a tank of formaldehyde, or a video about how he makes his art. So you could do any of those and then just write about it for 2 paragraphs. And once the way the formatted thing overall is, at the top you'll have the name of the artist that you're doing and your name. Then you'll have numbered each of the resources, the resources that you're citing, and then underneath each of the resources, so separately, you will have your annotation. So it'll be name of the artist, your name, number 1, first resource citation. Underneath that, the 2 paragraphs where you're describing what you learned or what you read or what you found out about that artist in that particular resource. And then number 2, and then that citation, and then the annotation underneath that, all the way down through everything that you're doing. Does that make sense? All right. I say that's a really good question. I've had 2 people in another class this semester write biographies about somebody, did a lot more work than the annotated bibliography requires because they didn't read it as bibliography, they saw it as biography. So thank you very much. That's a very good question. Okay, Alex, you get to pull a question out of your ear.
How many resources should I use? Like,
Well, I think that's an excellent question too. And in this one, we're going to have 5 resources. My other class, I have them do 8 resources. Even though it's a 1,000 level class, they still take it when they're juniors and seniors, so they're a little bit more used to writing. And this one, we do have people from all over the spectrum in this class, but I think it's more fair to you guys to just require 5 sources. And what kind of sources can these be?
Sources that don't get you like emotionally attached, like wanting you to buy it.
I think that's a really good observation. So you're not going to look for stuff on Facebook. But that I was talking about that as you are looking, ask those your questions to yourself as you're doing your research. Where is this source coming from? But what kinds of resources you can look up on YouTube and find your artists on YouTube, or a show that your artists have done, or maybe somebody is talking about how they feel about the artist's work. Uh, Remember that video that I had you look at, the Henry Moore sculpture, and heard the two people talk about it when we first started learning about the tools of artistic critique? Yeah, that would be, if you want to do your work on Henry Moore, that would be an excellent resource. And then your annotation would be describing about how you wanted to vomit when you first started the artwork, and then you're by applying the tools of artistic critique, you completely changed your mind. This is what it looked like, and this is why you no longer want to vomit. So that would be your annotation. And that's an excellent question. What other kind of resources can you look up or find? I'm thinking articles from that you could just look up doing a search on your artist. You can also go to there's networks of museum sites, and if the museum covers an artist, they will do a pretty good write up on that artist. Remember those things those things that we looked up on the Old Mali Kingdom. That was just from a museum, and the museums that have embraced the digital world have done a really good job about giving us all sorts of different resources that we can look up. And I think Wikipedia is an excellent resource too, but what is the excellent resource at Wikipedia?
Finding the source that they use.
Yes, excellent, perfect. Yeah, that is the best thing about Wikipedia. I love Wikimedia because they have a huge library of images that you can pull from that don't have copyright issues. But Wikipedia is excellent for finding further things to look at. And you may want to look up on YouTube, maybe find 4 or 5 videos, and then maybe a half a dozen articles. And then you'll realize, well, these 3 articles are pretty good, but these other 3 suck. And on YouTube, all those are just, they're trying to sell me something, except these 2 videos are actually really decent. And that's a really good way of winnowing down your sources for this kind of thing. But I will definitely write that up, Alex. It's 5 sources to cite. Now, do you remember which particular source? And also, if you interview the artist, you can cite that. Cite that as a resource too. And then the annotation would be just your notes from the interview. That would be excellent. Now, what is the one source I talked about a couple of weeks ago in which you will definitely get extra credit if you do it? And I said MLA has a standard way of citing it too. If either of you are abducted by aliens, taken on board the mothership, and interview one of those aliens about this artist, you will get extra credit, as long as that interview is properly cited according to MLA standards. All right? Something to shoot for. All right, that's all I have for today. If you guys have any of your own questions, that's great. But other than that, I covered everything I needed to. And I'm looking forward to seeing what people come up with on this list of artists. Again, you're not doing the bibliography this week. That's going to be the next week or the week after. All right? I think next week it looks like that's when you're going to make ink out of tea and coffee and stuff like that, and do an exercise on that. And that seems to make sense. And then the week after that is when, and I may publish the annotation one before it's due, just so that you guys have a little bit of extra time to look at it. Okay. All right. If you guys have nothing else you want to bring up or complain about, we're good.
Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
Well, hey, we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah.